crack on with the haircut. So the first thing that I'm going to do is have a drink of water. It's bloody hot. Right. So I've got to find the triangle section. That triangle section on top, I've got to find that first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comb it through the middle. Now, when I comb and section, I'm using that point of my comb just there, and I'm running it right on the scalp like you would do a pencil, just so I can get a really, really sharp section. Now, I don't want this to go as far back as the high point. And what I'm going to do is, you pass me a clip out there, darling. I'm just going to use a tissue when I clip the hair back, so I don't get any of them nasty clip marks in the hair. So I'm just looking for a triangle section in the front, just like I showed you on the mannequin. So our inspiration for this show was sweets. In fact, we wanted the show to be sweet-like, you know, all kind of colourful, what other one there? Colourful, fun and bright. The actual working title for this show was called the Redken Sweet Shop. We wanted the colours, the Redken colours, to do all the talking by themselves. I mean, the first segment that you saw us just do, we had this idea of bringing out bald models and actually putting hair on instead of cutting it off, right? And when the idea started to develop, we thought, well, putting hair on seems the obvious thing to do. We could put anything on the hair, couldn't we? And that's why Sam and Chris came up with the idea of putting wool on the hair, and I thought I'd come out all guns a-blazing and go with the sweet shop thing. So even though he was looking at me thinking, what's that nut doing putting refreshers on the head, there was actually a method to my madness, yeah? So what we're going to do now, we're going to take a section that runs, we're going to take a section that runs from the points of the triangle to the front of the hairline. Now this section that I'm going to cut here is imperative to the shape. So because of that, I'm going to section these two pieces out of the way so I get a very, very clear view of this first section. So I'm going to pull it up and I'm going to cut this at a 67.5 degree, in layman's terms, right, 90 degrees is there, 45 degrees is there, and 67.5 is in between. The reason why I'm doing that is I want to get a nice bit of graduation that falls on the fringe here. So I still think that's a little bit too long, so we're going to go back in and we're going to cut that a little bit shorter. So I'm pulling it out at my 67.5 degrees. Finger angle is just very, very vertical and parallel. And it's really, really important with this first section because the shorter you cut it, obviously the stronger the look's going to be. And the longer you leave it, the softer it's going to be. So suitability is absolutely key with this first section. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take parallel sections to my first section and I'm going to over-direct slightly into that previous section. Being very, very aware to keep my finger angle at 67.5 degrees and keep my angle very, very parallel, my finger angle to my first section. So to be quite honest with you, suitability, I never really used to understand that when I was a younger man. I used to go to redken events just like this one, well not just like this, but redken events, and I used to get really, really inspired, yeah? I used to leave redken events sort of feeling like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know, all pumped up like that, yeah? And I'd get to my salon nice and early the next day, you know, super excited for the day to start. And I'd be sharpening the scissors, you know, thinking I was Edward Scissorhands, salivating at the mouth, you know, waiting for my first customer to walk through the door. And lo and behold, my first customer that walked through my door on a Tuesday morning was pretty much like most first customers that walk through a salon door, British salon door, Tuesday morning. My first customer was Mrs. Brown, right? She came walking in like this with her bag back, yeah? And she sat down in my mirror. Now, I swear, I can remember Mrs. Brown was actually talking, because I can distinctly remember seeing her lips move in the mirror. But I wasn't listening, because Mrs. Brown, whether she liked it or not, that discom bomb that I saw at the redken event the day before, she was getting it. So an hour and a half later, I'm as wide as a bus, the feathers are spread like a peacock on heat. And poor old Mrs. Brown goes out looking like Lady Gaga on acid, you know. And it's just not a good way to build a clientele or make people happy, you know. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to carry on doing this. I'm going to work from side to side here rather than work one side and then the other side. The reason why I'm doing that is because I find I can get my balance a lot better if I work side from side. So 67.5 degrees. Still keeping my finger angle the same. And what I'm looking for this rounded shape that runs right through the front here. So I'm working back to corner of this triangle, putting it straight up, being very conscious of where my finger angle is going here, and keeping it at 67.5 degrees. There was a famous quote by Coco Chanel. She said, "We learn from what we do wrong, not what we do right." And when I coach people in my academies, there's some students here of mine today. Let's hear the Chelmsford lot. There's the Stevenson lot. Okay, so when we coach in my academies, when I coach people all around the world, we encourage people to do things wrong. We don't encourage them, but when they do things wrong and they make mistakes, we celebrate them. We high-five mistakes in my academy because, like Coco said, that's where all the learning is. The more mistakes you can make, the more learning you're having. It's funny, you know, because when my wife first moved in with me, about 7 years ago now, she was very aware of my philosophy about training, you know, and making mistakes and high-fiving and things like that, you know. And when she first moved in with me, we started sharing the washing, because that's what you kind of do, isn't it, when you're moving together, you know. And my wife, she doesn't really like designer clothes, you know. She buys all her clothes, they go straight on a hot wash, they go straight in a tumble dryer, and she doesn't own them. Because they're all so tight, they just go straight on her back, you know. Where me, I'm a southern softie, that's what she calls me. I like my bit of designer clobber here and there, you know. And I had this one Gucci shirt, right, that I absolutely loved, right. When I put it on, I felt like 5 kilograms lighter, you know, and it suited my complexion. I looked in the mirror and thought, yeah, I look sexy. You know what I mean, that bit of clothing that makes you feel like that. Well, I went to the tumble dryer one day after my wife had done a bout of washing, and I opened up the tumble dryer. You know when the tumble dryer's that hot, you feel like it singes your eyebrows? Well, I started going through the washing and I found my Gucci shirts in the tumble dryer, yeah? So I sweated like a pregnant nun, whisked it straight out, put it on the back, scolding myself in the process. Now, I know I've put on a little bit of weight these days. I'm more sausage roll than rock and roll, but I swear the buttons were popping off me, the sleeves came up to there, the top was there, I screamed at the top of my voice, I went, Jazz! She came running out of the bedroom thinking there was a fire, saw me standing there like something out of flashcards, and you know what she did? She went, high five! What could I say, eh? What could I say? Okay, so this is my last section here. Now, what you're looking for at the end, what you're looking for when you cross-check this, you're looking for a simple square line. When I cross-check this, I just want this line to be nice and simple and square. If I can get this line nice and square, because the head shape is round, it's going to give me a nice curved, round shape at the front. Well, there you go, I did that in one go. So there's my fringe. And if I'm going to use my points and the scissors to cut this, I'm just imagining that round line. Just imagining that round line, and I'm just working that line in, a bit like that, okay? So now we're going to go on to the butterfly section on the top. Suits them, doesn't it? Now you can see where suitability is so important, can't you? Because poor old Mrs. Brown, it's not going to work maybe so well on her, you know, so you might want to leave that a little bit longer. So now we're going to go on to the butterfly section. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a vertical section right through the middle of this. I'm going to put another clip in there just to keep it nice and neat. Another clip there, just to keep it nice and neat. I'm going to pull this up and I'm going to connect it to that front section and that same angle. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to point this in. So that section around the front. The reason why I'm pointing it is so when it falls, I'm going to get a slightly more diffused feeling on that graduation that I've put in the fringe. Has everyone heard of that independent study they've done on happiness in the workplace? Hands up who's heard about the independent study they've done on happiness in the workplace. Hands up who hasn't. Hands up who don't care. I'm going to keep asking that question so every person puts their hand up in the audience, because I know about this independent study they've done on happiness in the workplace. Because our #1 DJ went on about it on our #1 radio show for months, because he found it fascinating. And what this independent study on happiness found, out of all them thousands of jobs that we could have all decided on before we picked hair, it found that hairdressing was the happiest profession you could possibly be. And they found that 3 years in a row. Now, I'm no Dalai Lama, right? But one thing I do know is happiness has got to be one of the most important things in life. Would you agree?
Yeah.
There was a famous quote by John Lennon. He said, when I was 5 years old, my mum told me that happiness was the key to life. When John Lennon went to school, his teachers sat him down and asked him what he wanted to be when he grew up. And John Lennon said, well, I want to be happy. And the teacher said, well, you don't understand the assignment, John. And John Lennon said, well, you obviously don't understand life.
Woo.
I like that one. Hands in the air, ladies and gentlemen. Give yourself a pat on the back for finding hell. Okay, so we're now going to move on to the 2 other sections on the top. And what I'm going to do here, let that go. And I'm going to blend this in as well to that front section. Point cutting it. And then I'm going to blend this one in, last but not least. So just being very careful not to cut any of that line off, like I've got there, that bob line. Straight up, keeping that angle the same, keeping my fingers in the same position. Can't go wrong. If you keep your fingers in the same position, same angle, can't go wrong. Easy peasy. That's that section done. So now we're going to move on to the butterfly section at the back. And what we're going to do, we're going to now connect this to our 45-degree angle at the back. And what this is going to give us, because we've connected that 45-degree angle here and there, it's going to give us a triangle layer. What that will do, it will give us texture, and it will give us a little bit more length on top, and rather cutting it off. Get rid of that edge. So again, I'm just going to take a section right down the middle, and I'm going to connect this, keep my sections nice and clean. Now I'm going to connect that to my section through the back. I don't know about you guys, but I always used to find it very, very difficult getting my bob line, my balance the same on both sides. I used to get there in the end, but it always was a roundabout way. And I think that's because I'm right-handed, so my left-hand side was always rounded off, and my right-hand side was rounded off, and the left-hand side used to get longer. And I think that's because I used to cut my bobs like this, and it's quite easy to round that corner off and leave that corner a little bit longer. So what I discovered just recently is if I cut my bob from the inside, like I did this one, if I cut my bob from the inside out, my balance improves instantly. It feels a little bit awkward to begin with when you cut it like